What's going on, guys? It's your boy Ty, and today in this video I am here to plant my feet and defend one of my favorite movie franchises, that being the Avatar series. Listen, I know it's only 2 movies so far, and on top of that, I know that this is kind of a weird time to be talking about them, considering that we're like 10 months removed from the second one, and also the next one's coming out in like, I don't know, 2 years or whatever. So I know this is a weird time, but I was honestly just in the mood to talk about Avatar and show it some love, because I feel like this series is really overhated for no reason, and I'm going to get into those points in a second here. But guys, before we get into that, please consider liking this video if you enjoy it, and on top of that, if you love movie related content, I'm your guy. Check out my channel. Maybe there's a couple videos that you like if you're not a big Avatar person, but yeah, please consider subscribing if you want to stick around. That would mean the world to me. With that being said, let me get into my points here as to why I think the Avatar film series is a really strong one. Just to give you guys my perspective on the Avatar franchise, I really love it, obviously. I know I already said this before, but that first Avatar movie is definitely one of my favorite movies, probably top 20. It could be like 10 or 20. I just haven't really thought about it. But the second Avatar movie, I didn't like it as much, so I do think the first is better than the second, but the only reason for that is because I saw it in 3D, the second one, and honestly, I don't wear glasses or anything, but my eyes just didn't click with it, and I couldn't really enjoy it because I was having a hard time just seeing what was on the screen, so I rated it a little bit lower. I think the first movie is a 9 out of 10. I think it's great. Possibly a 10, honestly, but I haven't seen it in a little bit. And I think that the second one is probably like a 7 or an 8, but I need to rewatch it without the 3D glasses, because honestly, I only saw it one time when it released. Before I dive into the elements that I feel make these actually high quality movies, I feel like I need to talk about the exterior factors that make them an easy target for hate. First of all, there's two reasons that I feel here. The first one being how much money they've made. Avatar: The Way of Water, which just came out, is the 3rd highest grossing film ever, and Avatar 1 is the highest grossing film ever. Naturally, when you're at the top, they're gonna just try to rip you down. And I know that the amount of money that a film makes doesn't justify how good it is, because there's some garbage movies that have made over $1 billion, whether that's the live action Lion King, or even just some bad ones, like Captain Marvel, that's not amazing. I guess honestly, Frozen 2, that's another example where I'm just like, that wasn't really that great. But yeah, there's plenty of examples of really bad movies making a ton of money. But all I'm saying is, when you get that much attention, that much popularity, of course, the critics are going to just try to hunt you down more. They're going to try to, be less lenient when they're being critical. And I think that's pretty fair, because you can say, oh, why was this the highest grossing film of all time? Why was the second one the 3rd highest grossing film of all time? And I understand where they're coming from. And again, that's what I'm saying. That's what makes it an easy target for hate. But I still think they're extraordinarily great films, and I'm going to get into that in a second, like I said. My second reason, talking about these outside factors, is that everyone says James Cameron basically wasted his career and his talent making the Avatar franchise, because he spent basically the past 23 years on just these movies, because he made Titanic in 1999, then no movies right up until Avatar in 2009, then no movies, then Avatar 2. So he's literally spent like 23 years crafting the Avatar films. And I get it. I get what you're saying, because he made Terminator, Terminator 2, Titanic, great films. And I could see what you're saying about how he wasted his talent, because he just put so much time and so much effort into this without worrying about any other movies. But my pushback to that is that he just really wanted to leave his mark on the world. I know that he made arguably the greatest action movie of all time with Terminator 2, but I'm just saying, I feel like, at least from a popularity standpoint, he said, you know what, let's just go and make like the highest grossing franchise of all time. He wanted to make such a, well, I don't want to get too much into, the actual elements of the movie, because we'll talk about that in a second, but he just wanted to make such a surreal, immersive environment and just make it a franchise that will be remembered for possibly decades or hundreds of years. I don't know, but regardless, that's kind of like my little, pushback, like I said. But let's just start talking about why I think these movies are actually amazing. Let's just get into it here, though. Why do I feel these are just great films that honestly deserve more appreciation? Because I just feel like they get a lot of hate. Like I said, people think they're generic. People don't think they really use their potential to the fullest. But I honestly completely disagree. I think they are great movies. So we have to talk about, obviously, the visuals. These are arguably the greatest looking movies of all time. I know that it's technically like animated, it's not like comparable to like a live action movie technically, but these are literally pretty much objectively the greatest looking films of all time. Another thing I have to say, because just to add on to that, the first Avatar was made in 2009. 13 years later to the second movie, it looks so fluid when you watch the first, then watch the second. It really shows you how advanced the technology was at the time in 2009, because when you're looking at, let's just say, Revenge of the Sith compared to The Force Awakens, which was 10 years apart for a sequel, you can honestly see that The Force Awakens, quality-wise, looks so much better. But when you watch Avatar 1 and Avatar 2, they look like they came out a year, like within a year gap of each other. It's unbelievable. And obviously, they put a lot of money into this franchise as a whole. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars more than what other movies are even like, you know, being invested in. And it's just clear that what you're seeing is very expensive, but it's totally worth it, because that's just another reason as to why I feel like these films are so memorable and why they deserve that praise, because they're just gorgeous to look at. Another element that does kind of go hand in hand with the visuals here is the world building. James Cameron's an absolute genius for what he was able to do with this world of Pandora that we have here. I mean, the fact that I'm pretty sure, at least, James Cameron basically crafted the Na'vi's like language using like a professor from some university who studied like different dialects of languages so that their language wouldn't sound like any other language on Earth. That's crazy to me. I mean, the fact that he put that much effort in, the way that all the landscapes look, the way that the animals and these, I guess you could say, monsters, animals, whatever you want to call them, all look so unique and like nothing you've seen before. Again, the CGI is stellar. It looks perfect. Everything feels so real. This world feels lived in. It doesn't feel like it was just made by a computer and you're just looking at, you know, these brand new trees. No, everything really feels, when you're in the forest, like dirty and like gritty. Then as you go towards the ocean, like in the second movie, it feels very fresh and stuff. Like, I mean, wow, the way that they're just able to expand the lore, that's definitely got to be one of my favorite things, of course. But wow, I mean, James Cameron really is a creative genius, and just all the elements of this story, which I'll get into in a second, I really feel like just go so well and everything fleshes together nicely. It almost feels like the visuals contribute to the world building. The world building contributes to the story. And all of these are just kind of like this symbiotic relationship, and everything just helps each other and fleshes each other out. And I just love that. If that kind of makes sense. What I'm basically trying to say is, it's almost like this movie, as ironic as it is, almost has its own ecosystem that keeps itself going throughout these films. And I think that's really impressive. In case I wasn't clear about what I was just saying, I just mean that like everything just kind of builds off of each other. The visuals build off the story builds off the visuals, the world building builds off the story. Like all these things just go hand in hand. They really mesh together nicely, and that's why I think they really have a strong bond that makes this film spectacular. Kind of getting into the story elements here, I feel like this is the main target of hate, because it's hard to hate on the visuals, hate on the world building. It's obvious there was a lot of time and effort and talent put into those things. But the story, the script, is obviously something that's easier to critique, because that's what tends to get critiqued in most films. I've got to say, I don't know how people can say these stories are like generic. I've seen that people said, oh, it's like Pocahontas, how John Smith kind of sees the other side of, you know, what they're destroying with, like, you know, the Native American people, and then he switches up on his own people, just like Jake Sully does once he sees what's going on with the Na'vi people. The only difference is that in Pocahontas, that story is terrible, and it's bland, and it's boring. If you copy something, it doesn't matter about who does it first, it's about who does it better. I don't care if you copy something, as long as you're doing an amazing job, then who cares? Why would you say, oh, they're just copying the story from this, they're copying the story of that? Oh, why would Jake even turn his back on these people? The argument that the characters are forgettable, honestly, I feel like is more just on the viewer than the actual film. I feel like Jake Sully, while he's not the most extravagant, amazing main character, especially more in the first film, I feel like he is still a very cool character, especially when he's in his avatar form, because obviously he's able to do more. I feel like it was also a nice touch to make him, I don't mean to sound like that, paralyzed from the waist down, just because that adds to his character. It gives him depth because you could see his motivations more clearly. He almost wears them on his sleeve, and that makes sense. Neytiri, the like leader of our Avatar people, just in the sense that she's like the main one. An amazing character. She loves her people. She loves her culture. And it's cool that we get to basically go on this journey with Jake to go right into the culture that the humans aren't seeing. Whether it's Grace, Norm. Yes, I do know these people's names, like the side characters. On top of that, Quaritch is a great villain. He hates Jake Sully. He thinks he betrayed his people. He went against them. And it's personal because obviously, you know, he's trying to save his people. Jake is trying to save his new people, I guess you could say. And that creates a personal battle that I think is so cool. The way that these movies are able to use immersion as a tool to make you literally forget completely that you're at the movie theater or at home on your couch, whatever, watching them is amazing. And that's able to pull you in and make you believe the story more. There are just so many awesome moments in this film too. That final battle is so sick, whether it's the first part of it when they're actually trying to stop the ship, or the 1v1 fight, hand-to-hand combat with the mech suit and Quaritch. So cool. That opening sequence when they finally land on Pandora, it's really sick. That's the first time you're seeing the world. And I feel like throughout the story, there's just so many interesting points where you're seeing relationships form, you're seeing emotions again being pulled out, you're falling in love with this Na'vi culture. And I think that that's just amazing. The Na'vi's design looks great. Talking with the second film, I feel like it was slightly too long. I know that these are long movies generally, but I do feel like there's a little bit of filler in there. And again, I didn't love the story as much, especially since it took this attention away from Jake and Neytiri a little bit. I'd still wish that they were like more our main characters here, but I get that they're kind of trying to do a pass the torch thing with their kids. And again, they're just continuing to expand the world building here because now we're in the sea and we're seeing these massive creatures. Listen, I'm a sucker for like natural history. I love like natural history museums. So being able to see like these made up monsters or animals, whatever you want to say, these made up ecosystems, it's so cool to me. I'm just such a sci-fi lover. And I love to see the human side of this, how they're actually starting to like build on this planet. They're building on Pandora. So they're becoming an even greater threat. I just love these movies. I feel like I didn't really hit on every single point that I wanted to here. I probably forgot a couple of things, but just generally to summarize my thoughts, because I could talk about this for probably an hour, I want to make these clear. First of all, these movies are super immersive. Second of all, I really think the storytelling is very strong. Is it the best story I ever made? No, but I just think that people give it way too much hate for the story when it really is a great, interesting story that never really like lets you go between the two films. Also, it has emotional moments. The visuals are basically the best ever made, even though it's kind of hard to decipher whether you'd consider this live action or animated. And yeah, overall, I do think that there really are some good characters in here, even though people say that they're forgettable, which again, I think they're well developed and well fleshed out. Does that make sense? They're very nicely fleshed out. But guys, that's gonna just about do it for today. Kind of a little nerdy fact. This is actually one of the movies, well, just talking about the first one, that I could quote the most. I know that probably no one else says, oh yeah, I can quote Avatar, but it's just one of these movies that for some reason I just naturally gravitate to. I love world building, like I said, so of course I'm gonna love these movies. But yeah, guys, that being said, that's gonna be all for today. Thank you guys for watching this video. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video.